Hello YouTube, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to do a wrap up for January and February, combining them both. It's just going to be me talking about the books I read, the manga I read, some of the anime I watched, and one show as well. Let's just get into it. The first book I'm going to talk about is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. So this book is about an empire that is built on bone shard magic. And what that means is that the emperor takes a shard of bone from, like, back here, I think, from every citizen in the empire and uses it to power constructs as needed. And constructs are just basically these magical creatures that the emperor builds to serve the empire in various ways. Bureaucracy, espionage, military, stuff like that. So this story follows a few characters. It follows one, the emperor's daughter, Lynn, who is trying to remember her past and succeed her father in taking the throne. There's also a revolutionary who is dating a governor's daughter, and they're trying to navigate that whole situation, revolution. And then finally, our other POV character is a man who is searching for his lost wife. Well, his abducted wife. And it's all set in this, the empire is a series of islands. So it's very like tropical, almost nautical even. It's a pretty cool setting. But honestly, I just felt pretty meh overall at this. I didn't really love it. I didn't really hate it. It was pretty exciting at times, but it always felt sort of just like superficial. So I never really got into it all that much. I never really got all that invested. The one thing that really bugged me about it was the constantly shifting POVs. That's something that I just don't really like. I don't mind it all the time, but if I don't love every single POV character and every single POV like plot line and storyline, it just becomes like really tedious to me. And in this one, almost every time a chapter ended, we switched to another POV. So it's like we never got a continuation, hardly ever, except like maybe at the beginning kind of. So it just got really annoying that like once we ended a chapter, I knew that the story was just going to cut off and we were going to switch to someone else. And it just, I don't know, it got really annoying after a while. It broke my immersion, honestly, and that was like really detrimental to me. It broke my reading flow. So yeah, it was just frustrating overall. There were no characters I really loved all that much. I think my favorite character was probably Mephi, the little like sea beast. He was very cute and I loved him very, very much. But other than that, none of the human characters I really enjoyed all that much. Jovis was probably the most interesting to me, but even with him, I feel like I never really understood his personality. Like, I knew what he wanted, but his personality and like his character voice never really came through. So I never really felt like I knew him or I was that like deeply connected to him. Lynn was also another interesting character, but ultimately she was just kind of boring. Like, I don't know. I was really bored every time we were with her. And then Falu, I don't know how you pronounce that one, and Ranami were like really annoying. I didn't like them at all. They were kind of like jerks almost in different ways. Jerks to each other. Like, I don't know how they had a relationship. It seemed like it was doomed. And I don't know how it's going to go in the next books, but I'm skeptical. So yeah, it was just hard to connect with any of them. And characters are the most important thing to me in stories. So if I couldn't connect with any of the characters, then I didn't really care about anything that was going on. On top of all that, the pacing was kind of off here. It felt like it was almost too fast-paced to the point where the world building and the connection to the story and to the world and to the characters suffered because of it. So, again, that all just contributes to me feeling pretty meh about the book overall. Overall, it was pretty fun. Like, it's not a bad book as a thing. It's pretty fun, but I just wanted more. I wanted more, and I don't really care about the story all that much at the end of the day. So, unfortunately, that was how I felt about The Bone Shard Daughter. Next, I'm going to talk about Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the first book in the Founders trilogy. It's set in a city where there's these 4 powerful families, and then everyone else that isn't like connected to one of these families just basically lives in poverty. Our main character is someone who lives in this poverty-stricken part of the city. She is a thief, and she's hired to do a job for one of these families. It's all kind of shrouded in mystery, though. She doesn't really know who it's for. She doesn't really know what she's doing. She just knows that she needs to get a box. So when she does the job, that unlocks this whole extra set of problems. She comes across a magical object that she has to communicate with and solve its like inner mysteries and secrets and basically deal with the consequences of taking the object and having the object. And this is all while doing her best to deal with the hijinks, to put it very nicely, that all the powerful families are up to. This one was another pretty fun one, just kind of like Bone Shard Daughter. It was fun. It was also on the faster paced side, and it definitely got more exciting the closer that I got to the end. And I'm not gonna lie, I did consider DNFing this like halfway through because I just wasn't feeling it so much. But I am glad that I pushed through and got to the end because, like I said, the ending got, like, the latter half of the book really got way more exciting. So I was glad I stuck around. So what I liked about this book was the world building and the pacing. I really liked the world here. I liked how it was set up. I think it was explored sufficiently. And I really like how these like legends and histories of the world came into play and were brought into the story, like the Hierophants or Hierophants, who were basically like these old gods, essentially. Like that's what people thought of them anyways. Their stories come into play and inform the current narrative, and I thought that was really cool. That's a trope that I do actually like in stories. I like when gods are brought in somehow. Just always makes it feel like larger than life, and I always like that. And I especially love how we just kind of learn about them bit by bit throughout the story. That's not really like info dumped to us. We just kind of get these little hints and clues, again, bit by bit. And I especially love that method of revealing things so that at the end of the story, when we look back to the beginning, we can see how much the knowledge that our characters have changed so drastically throughout the book. I think that's so cool. I love seeing that. Their worldview just changes so drastically. It's so cool. As for the pacing, it was kind of similar to the Bone Shard Daughter, where it was pretty fast paced all the way through. Except here, the difference is that the POV hopping was way less. I think we barely POV hopped. Like, we mostly stayed with Sanchia, the main character, which was good. I like that personally. It was kind of like an action movie, but in book form, which is like really cool. I like that. Now, all that said, I do have some criticisms. First of all, the characters. This is another case of me not connecting with any of the characters. They all, again, felt kind of surface level. Like, we got some histories, like backstories for some of them, like Sanchia and Gregor. But even that didn't really get me to care about them enough. They just didn't really feel that deep to me, unfortunately. On top of that, I feel like no one had any concrete personalities. Like, they were all defined by kind of one trait. Like, they were angry, they liked the law, something like that. They just didn't feel three-dimensional. So I just couldn't deal. To boot, there were no character voices. Like, no one felt distinct from each other. They all felt like the same person. So that didn't help either. Also, the character relationships weren't very well established. People that were supposed to be like familiar and friendly with each other, like, didn't really feel that way. And also, there's 4 people that kind of come together to form like a team, a crew, and they all just start working together so easily. There's like no opposition, which you think there would be and there should be, because they're all from different stations in society. They're all from different like classes, essentially. So it should be a lot harder for them to start working together and like come together as a team. But it's like they just easily, like, there was a little bit of arguing at the beginning, but then like after a chapter or so, they were all just fine. They worked together perfectly. So I was looking for a lot more conflict there that would have made it like feel more, fuller, but I just didn't get that. I feel like I was almost robbed of a really cool side plot of them having to form a stronger connection and build a friendship, but nah. Also, the dialogue in this book, oh my God, it was so bad. It was so unnatural. I couldn't imagine like humans saying these lines. So that really bothered me and distracted me throughout like the whole thing. It also tended to be really exposition heavy, which like kind of leans into that unnatural aspect. It was just like, Yeah, it was just like really cringy. And the worst part about the dialogue was the swearing. Oh my God. Now listen, I don't have any problem with swearing in books. Like I do it all the time personally. So I don't have a problem with it. It's just that I don't like when you can tell an author just puts it in just to make like a line feel edgy or a character feel edgy. And it doesn't feel natural. They put it in at like a weird point in the sentence. Again, it's so unnatural. No one talks like that. No one puts in a curse like at that point in their sentence. I don't know how to explain it, but like I said, it feels like it was injected into a sentence to feel edgy or adult or something, or like someone learns how to swear for the first time or learns that they can swear for the first time. I also generally don't like when authors come up with their own swear words for their novel. I always find that to be a little cringy. So yeah, I didn't like that here. Lastly, about this book, the villain. Yeah, the villain of this book was like way too mustache twirlingly like comically evil, complete with villain monologuing. So I didn't like that. It didn't work for me at all. It just made me laugh, honestly. So all of that being said, I did actually quite enjoy this one. It was pretty fun. Sanchia and Clef's friendship was the highlight of the novel for me, 100%. But, it was overall pretty good, pretty fun. Next, I'm going to talk about Winterhouse by Ben Guterson or Guterson? Guterson, I think. This one is about a girl who gets mysteriously sent off to a winter resort called the Winterhouse Hotel. And while she's there, she finds a magical book and through it starts to unravel some of the secrets behind the hotel and the family that owns it. And she comes to love Winterhouse, which she has to essentially save by uncovering these secrets. So this one, I am not on a good roll here because this one was also kind of a disappointment. I didn't really love it. I thought it was going to be so fun. I thought the mystery was going to be really like intriguing, but the mystery was the worst part to me. I don't know if it's just because I'm an adult. Like obviously this is aimed for kids. This is a middle grade book. So it's not really like aimed at me personally. I'm not the target audience. So I might have just found the mystery too easy because it's supposed to be for kids, but every single twist and turn that came was so obvious to me. I had already predicted it beforehand that it just felt really tedious to read. Like, yeah, I know this, get through it, you know what I mean? So all the like build up and reveals were just like such a slog. I was like, I get it. And I'm not even good at like guessing twists and mysteries. Like I'm usually pretty bad at that, honestly. It was just so obvious here that it was too easy. But, at the end of the day, this is technically meant for kids. So I do think they would probably like it. I would assume anyways. I would be interested to see how kids feel about this one, but I do think they would probably like it. Like it's fun enough. And I'm sure they would not guess all the twists as well as I did. Also, the setting of this book was really cool. I think the author did a really good job of setting it up and making the Winterhouse feel really fun, like a place you would want to go. So it's like a good escape, it's a good escape book. I also just want to talk about the main character who I really did not like at all. They tried to make us sympathize for her by giving her kind of like a tragic backstory and also having her basically have like the Harry Potter treatment where the people that she lives with don't like treat her very well. But she was just so like bratty for most of the book that it destroyed any goodwill that her backstory had built up. So I was just like annoyed with her for most of the book. She also tended to withhold information for the most annoying and dumb reasons, just for like plot convenience sake. So she wouldn't reveal information to the adults too early. Like there is no reason for her not to reveal things at certain times, but she just withheld information anyways. So annoying. So like I said, this probably works better for kids, just didn't work that well for me. Next is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I almost can't believe I read this. If you knew me and my reading tastes at all, this is like way outside. I generally don't really like romance. I don't read romance heavy books. I don't even always love romance subplots in books. It's just not something I really gravitate towards. The reason I picked up this book, actually first let me discuss what this book is about. So this book is about a girl named Poppy, who is essentially this religious figure for her nation. So they are working towards this event where she's going to ascend and basically like give herself up so that she saves everyone else in the kingdom. Ascension. But through the power of romance, she begins to question everything and she tries to get out of her situation and get out of the path that's been laid for her. So, why I picked this book up. Fantasy vampires. Vampires are my favorite fantasy or paranormal like creature. I freaking love vampires, okay? So even though this one was pretty romance heavy, the fact that it had fantasy vampires was like it for me. I was ready. I was gonna get it. I was reading this. Because the thing is, like, fantasy vampires are, in my experience, maybe this is not true, like maybe I just haven't explored enough, but to me, it's not very prevalent in fantasy. Like, there's paranormal vampires, there's urban fantasy vampires, but there's not really like fantasy, like medieval fantasy vampires. So when I heard this was going to be like a fantasy, like a high fantasy with vampires, I was in. I was ready. And honestly, this was not as bad as I thought it was going to be, okay? I definitely had to turn off my inner critic for like the whole thing and just like relax and let myself enjoy it. But once I did that, it was a pretty fun time. I just let myself be swept up in the drama. I also knew the reputation this had on Book Talk and BookTube. So like I knew going into it, it wasn't going to be like, listen, the height of literature, okay? And I'm also not on TikTok. Like I don't go on TikTok. I don't think I even have a TikTok. So I never got bombarded with this book, you know. I never got it aggressively shoved down my throat on TikTok by Book Talk. So I'm not like tired of it, or I'm not like seeing everyone say it's the best thing since sliced bread, or like it's the best thing I've ever read, or anything like that. So I can go into it with pretty much no expectations or no prior opinions on it. So I think that probably helped too. So before I go into things, let's just get something out of the way here. The author did name two of her POC characters, Tawny and Kieran, which is, yeah, that's bad. Okay. And I don't know if they were the only POC characters, but they were at least two POC characters. How did that get through editing? Like, how did everyone say that was okay? I don't understand. That's really bad. Okay. So Poppy, let's talk about Poppy. I didn't hate Poppy. I think she was like a little bit annoying because she did that thing where she does the opposite of everything everyone tells her to do, which like can get really tedious and annoying, but it just wasn't as egregious as I've seen it done before. So it didn't annoy me too much. I also liked the relationships, the non-romantic relationships that she had with other people, like Victor, her mentor, and Tawny, her best friend. I think that was really well done. I think those relationships were built up really well, and they were really compelling. The author also did a good job at making some very hateable antagonists. Very good job. I also appreciated that it felt to me like the author gave as much weight to the non-romantic scenes and sequences as she did to the romantic-ish ones. Sometimes I feel like authors, when they just want to write romance, they just kind of hurry through their non-romantic scenes and like don't give them any sort of conflict or tension or anything like that. So I don't think that was the case here. It didn't feel like it. So I was happy with that because it made reading the whole book kind of fun instead of just reading the romantic scenes kind of fun. So it was, like I said, a pretty fun book. Now, onto some negatives. While it was kind of just fun the whole way through, it was just like there was a lot of drama, there was a lot of intrigue, you know, there was things to be interested in. Still, the plot didn't really get going until about 60 to 70% of the way into the book, and that is a little too long in my opinion. The first chapter especially, or maybe like a couple of chapters, I think it might have just been the first chapter though, was like only exposition and world building, and that was a bold choice. Once I started reading those, I wasn't even sure I wanted to keep reading because I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. Like, I don't want to just read world building, but it definitely got better after that. It got less and less, so that's good at least. Also, no shock here, but yeah, the love interest was problematic. Quite problematic. Do fantasy romances just always have problematic love interests? Is that just a thing of the genre? I don't read enough fantasy romance to know. So maybe that's just how it's gonna be. I don't know. If you do know, please let me know. Also, you know, I knew this going into it, so that wasn't too much of a shock to me. I braced myself accordingly. My final point that I just wanted to get to with this book is like the creature names. I hated them, honestly. They were just really cringy and strange. Like, I don't think they cooked in the author's brain long enough. I get that she wanted them to be different from normal, but they just felt nonsensical almost to me. For example, Woven? That just sounds wrong. Woven. I'm going to keep saying it until it just doesn't sound like a word. Woven. That's an adjective, not a noun. Also, vampry or vampire. Either way you say it, it sounds awful. It sounds horrendous. Vampry. Oh, yes. Hello. I am a vampire. Ew. I hate it. Just call them vampires. It's so much cooler. Also, Craven. This one was also always capitalized. Why was it capitalized? Is it a proper name? I don't understand. Craven. Another adjective. Why'd she like adjectives as nouns? So yeah, basically this was not the best book I've ever read by a long shot, but it was still a fun time overall. Between the last like 3 books, this and Foundryside and Bone Shard Daughter, you can sense a theme here of like not the best thing I've read, but it was still like fairly fun. Okay, the final 2 books I read are The Two Towers and The Return of the King by JRR Tolkien, of course. So yes, I did finish The Lord of the Rings. And let me tell you, yeah, they were so good. So let me first talk about Two Towers. So Two Towers was very, very good. I enjoyed it. It was a lot faster paced and a little more exciting than Fellowship, which was very slow and very, very exposition heavy. I seem to be reading a lot of fast paced books in these last 2 months. So it was just a little more fun than Fellowship. Even though I really liked Fellowship a lot, this one was a little more easier to get through. I was interested to see how Tolkien was going to break up all the different like subplots and journeys, because obviously in the movie they just kind of cut back and forth between the 3 different groups every so often. So I didn't know if he was going to do that here as well or what. But in actuality, what happened is we saw all of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli's journey, and Merry and Pippin too. We saw all of that. And then after that was done, then we saw Frodo and Sam on their journey. So it was interesting to see. I'm not sure I really loved how it was done here, just because I'm sorry, but I was more interested in Aragorn's subplot than Frodo's. Sacrilegious. So like once Aragorn's whole thing was done, then we had followed Frodo and Sam for the rest of the time. And I was like, I missed them though. My favorite sequences were by far the Battle of Helm's Deep. Yeah, it was amazing. And also the fight in Shelob. How do you even pronounce that? I don't know. I think Shelob. The battle basically in Shelob's lair. So exciting. Yeah, I was on the edge of my freaking seat for that. Even though I knew how it was going to end, I was like, oh my gosh, are they going to live this time? You know, it was fun. And Two Towers leaves off on a huge cliffhanger. Oh my gosh. Like, if I was alive at the time when this was actually coming out, like in real time, it would have been so hard to wait for the next installment to come out. And I did even have to wait a little bit because I was checking it out from the library and there were holds. So I did have to wait and I hated it. So I couldn't even imagine. But overall, Two Towers, very good. Okay, and that brings us to Return of the King. This book was incredible. I loved it so much. It's already gone on my list of favorite books of all time, and I'm not going to be surprised if this ends up being my favorite book I read this year. Obviously, we still have a lot of year left, but you know, we'll see. I'm pretty confident. Hello, it's me. I'm filming in a new location. Due to technical difficulties, I'm just going to finish out the rest of the video from here. So welcome back to me, I guess, not to you. So anyways, continuing on with my discussion of Return of the King. It was just such an amazing finale. It wrapped up everything so well. The conclusion was great and the climax was exciting. The resolution was sad, but in a good way. I know one of the biggest complaints of this book especially is that the resolution and the ending goes on a little too long, but personally, I thought it was perfect. I wouldn't change hardly a thing about it. I didn't want to let these characters go. I didn't want to say goodbye to the story, so the longer we got to just sit in the resolution and sit with the characters, it felt like it gave me that much better closure to the whole story, which I needed. It was just such an epic journey that I felt like we needed that time to say goodbye to everything and everyone. It was a perfect choice in my opinion. My favorite scene of the entire trilogy was without question the charge of the Rohirrim at the Battle of Pelennor Fields. I don't even have words to express how good that scene was. It was amazing. I mean, it was so emotional. It was so exciting. I was freaking crying the entire time. It was so good. I loved Tolkien's prose, especially in that scene. I mean, I liked his prose overall. I know that it can be a little bit polarizing, but personally, I liked it. And yeah, during the Charge of the Rohirrim, it was just put on display at its best. And it got me. And then after that, I loved the entire ending. As I said before, I just really loved it. The slow goodbye and just like Frodo, especially his reckoning with the entire journey, like him being able to just stay in Minas Tirith with all of the fellowship was just so nice. I really liked reading about that. And then when they all made the journey to their homes, saying goodbye to Aragorn, and then they went on their ways, and then they said goodbye to Legolas and Gimli, and then it was just the hobbits and Gandalf, and then they said goodbye to Gandalf. I hated it, but I loved it. But like, yeah, I was like crying the whole time. Not gonna lie. And then we get to the Scourging of the Shire, which is another kind of polarizing thing, I feel like, about this. I didn't hate it, but I do think it went on maybe just a smidge too long. And I think that's about my only complaint with this book. And it's not even a big complaint because honestly, I didn't really mind it all that much. I just think if I did have to have something to complain about, it would be that. And I can also see why it was cut out of the movie. Like, I don't think it would have worked in that medium at all. So I think it's probably a good choice that they left it out. I get it. And then at the end, when Frodo left Middle-earth, I mean, I knew it was happening. I've seen the movies. I knew it was going to come, but my heart still wasn't ready for it. My heart. And then after the Return of the King, Tolkien includes appendices at the end to give some history on some aspects of Middle-earth, not everything, like a lot about Numenor and the ancestry of Aragorn. And then along with that, the appendices also then focus on Aragorn too and his future and what happens to him. So overall, I am glad that I continued on and read the appendices. I wasn't sure. I was like, I'm probably just going to skip them. But I decided to continue on, and I was glad I did. Well, first of all, I wasn't ready to leave Middle-earth behind at that point, but also it just gives like good context to everything that we just saw happen in The Lord of the Rings. And then when it talks about Aragorn and with the events leading up to, you know, his death, and then subsequently Arwen's death, crying again, cries forever with this book. Yeah. So I'm glad I went on to the appendices. They are definitely a little dry, of course. Like they're not like fun to read, but you still get something from them. At least I got something from them. So I think they're important too. So yes, Return of the King is 10 out of 10, 100%, 1 billion stars. So good. Now I'm going to talk about the manga I read these past 2 months, which is just Bleach. It's only Bleach. So let's talk about Bleach. I am into Bleach. I really like it so far. It's exciting. I'm having a great time. It's a very action-heavy story, which is really interesting because I don't think I've ever read a manga that's quite as action-heavy. So it's interesting to see all the fight and the battle scenes done on the page instead of on a screen, but I don't find it any less easy to follow the battles. So I think the mangaka did really well with that. I fly through the volumes because they're just so exciting and, you know, again, so action heavy that it's just like really easy to get through them. I'm really liking pretty much all of the characters so far. I think my favorites, besides Ichigo, of course, are like Orihime and Chad. And I am kind of, okay, listen, I'm not very far in, so I don't know his character super well yet, but I do sort of like Renji. I don't know how long he sticks around, but I kind of hope it's a while because I'm liking him so far. He's interesting. I'm also loving all the teamwork and friendships in the story. That's something that I really like about shonen manga / anime is that it seems like there's almost always such a focus on teamwork and friendships, which just touches my heart. I love it so much. I'm absolutely loving that about Bleach. I would say that by volume 4, I was completely in. No backing out for me. And that was the volume where they were filming like a TV show for this guy, Don Kanonji. And that's kind of funny because it feels like that volume was filler volume. Like it didn't really have any significance to the story, I don't think, unless maybe in the future it does. But I feel like it was that volume that really showed me all the character voices and like how exciting the story was going to be. So it just got me really excited and very hyped for the rest of the series. It was a really fun volume. Currently, I am in the middle of the Soul Society arc. It's really compelling, and we are meeting so many great new characters that I'm loving, and I'm loving their relationships that are developing with each other, like the friendships, the rivalries, all that kind of fun stuff. And I'm hoping that the characters we meet here stick around longer than just this arc, but I guess we'll see. But I will be sad if we lose them. I am excited to see Chad and Orihime developed more as characters. There have been some interesting reveals about them that I'm not going to get into too much because of spoilers, but their situations are interesting, and I am interested to learn more about them. I also want to see more of the Soul Society because, like, I didn't realize at first that it was, like, essentially this whole other domain or, like, dimension world, and there's so much to it. I'm eager to explore more of it. I hope we get to do that in the Soul Society arc. I mean, it makes sense because that's what it's called, but, you know, I'm hoping. Also, the bucket hat guy, Urahara, I am so intrigued by him. He is very interesting to me. Very intriguing. I am excited to learn more about his whole deal because he's got a lot going on. And I want to learn. I want to learn more. So yes, I am very interested in Bleach. I'm loving it so far, and I will absolutely, without a doubt, be continuing on. Now I'm going to go over the anime that I watched the past 2 months. First up is One Piece. In One Piece, I am up through the Arlong Park arc. That's a mouthful. I'm not gonna lie, I am having some problems so far. I'm feeling like it's dragging a little bit, and it was kind of hard to push through the Arlong Park arc, but I haven't given up on One Piece yet. What I do like so far is how the Straw Hat Pirates are building up. I like that Luffy is amassing people. He's gathering them into his crew, and I do love it. I like the story of how each person gets recruited. The action scenes in this show they're not like super, so I kind of anticipated it being an older anime. It's like started in, I don't know, 99 or maybe 2000 or something like that, but the action scenes are pretty slow paced, just kind of something I've accepted with it. But it's still like a little annoying. So far, I think my favorite arcs have been Romance Dawn and Syrup Village, which is kind of funny because my favorite characters so far have turned out to be Zoro, of course, and also Usopp, which was kind of a sleeper for me because I didn't think I was going to like Usopp. I don't know. He just seemed like he was going to be annoying, but I don't know. I find him very endearing. He's like an underdog. He's not as strong as everyone else, but he tries really hard. So I like Usopp. And again, in One Piece, there's these themes of friendship and teamwork, which again, I love so much. The next anime I want to talk about is Black Clover. I am completely caught up with Black Clover, completely caught up with the anime, that is, not the manga. I'm just going to continue on with the anime, hoping that it gets picked back up and they keep continuing on with it. I don't know, I've seen some doubt online, but I'm hoping that they continue on with the anime. If they don't, I'll probably end up reading the manga, but for now, I'm just gonna wait until the anime continues on. So I am loving Black Clover. It's been so fun, so exciting so far. I am not gonna lie, it took me like 20 episodes to get into this one, which seems like a lot, but I had seen people talk about how it took a while for this one to get going, and then once it did, it got so good. So I was willing to stick it out, and I'm really glad I did because, yeah, this could probably end up being one of my favorite anime of all time. Sometimes even if I see people say it gets better, I still won't push through because if there's nothing that keeps me hooked, like no little aspect of the show that keeps me hooked or the book or whatever it is, then I'm not going to give it my time. But thankfully there was already characters here that I liked. I liked the setting. I liked the magic. I liked some of the little hints at a bigger plot line overall that we were getting. So there were still some things for me to hold on to while I waited to get really connected with the story. And then once I hit that point, yeah, I was in. I love the Black Bulls to death. Gosh, they're just great. I love an underdog story. I love a band of misfits. And some of the animation in it is so beautiful. You can tell the episodes that the animators worked the hardest on, but it paid off because they look great. And there's even more themes of friendship and teamwork here, which again, just has a chokehold on me. I think so far, all of my favorite characters are like basically all of the Magic Knight captains. They're the most fun. I also really like Noct a lot. In the anime, we just met him. I think he's been in it for like 2 or 3 episodes, but already like I'm hooked on him because he's so intriguing. Again, just like the bucket hat guy in Bleach, he's so intriguing. I'm like, I need to know more about you. He's got some very interesting magic. Ready to learn more about him. So yeah, Black Clover is good. So very last of all, I just want to talk about the show that I finished this past month, which was His Dark Materials. I did read all 3 His Dark Materials books, and I finished it really late. I was way behind. I didn't watch the week releases, but I did finish it. So far in the show, I've liked season 1 a little bit better than the Golden Compass. I think it just improved on things about the book that I didn't love, like the dialogue. I think it was just really well paced, and it also adapted the book really well. Season 2, I'm kind of split on. I don't know whether I liked it or the Subtle Knife book better. I think there was things I liked and disliked about each. So that one was kind of an even split for me. And then season 3, I think I liked the book better. But even then, I didn't really love the Amber Spyglass all that much. My interest in His Dark Materials kind of waned as the trilogy went on. One thing about the show that really was unfortunate to me was that the actors for Lyra and Will aged up between seasons, which I think we can probably partially blame on the pandemic, because I'm sure they had delays in shooting. But also, you know, that's just life, and there's not really much that can be helped about that. Well, there's not anything that can be helped about that. But still, it just like my mind couldn't get over the fact that it was harder to sympathize with these like bratty teenagers rather than the younger kids that they would have been if it were truer to the book. So that was just an unfortunate circumstance. But yeah, it really made me kind of like find Lyra and Will both just so like tedious. But still, there was a lot of things I like about the ending of the story, so it was fun to see that in visual form. So if you saw His Dark Materials, I would be really interested to see how you felt about it. Leave a comment and let me know, because this is the one I'm most intrigued by, to see what other people thought. Anyways, that is all for me for my January and February wrap up. Read and watched a lot of great things, some meh things, but overall I think it was a pretty good 2 months. So I guess that's all for me. If you had any favorites from these past 2 months, leave them in the comments. Let me know, because I always want to add more things to my TBR and TBW to be watched. Other than that, just like have a good day. Farewell.